I'm feeling splendidly headachy today. All right, let's get these off. Today we are talking about the UK Times, Have You Got Marital Hatred? Subtitled, He's the Couple Therapist to the A-List, who says it's normal to have some very dark thoughts about your spouse. Terry Real talks to Andrew Billen. Terry Real talks to Andrew Billen. The framing there sets Andrew Billen up as the star attraction, the person that we've come to this article to read about. That's so odd. And then there's this weird little covert narcissist exchange in which Andrew makes himself the victim of Terry Real not knowing his name. Like, how dare you not know Andrew Billen? Wait. That's not the least of it either. Throughout the whole article, it seems like Billen is taking underhanded jabs at Terry Real and trying to fight with him over the focus and make himself the subject of his own interview. It gets a little weird. Quoting the interviewer, Terry Real says he doesn't cheat, yet what is this? In Us, describing a counseling session with a serial cheater, Real seems to quote himself owning up to affairs. I'm saying no these days and have for quite some time. Can I tell you why? Mike nods. Because I don't want to hurt my partner. I don't want to look in my kid's eyes and explain why daddy screwed around on mom. I don't want my reputation ruined. And believe it or not, I'd rather live in a state of integrity. Real disputes that he wrote that. This is really dishonest on the part of Alistair Balustrade. When I email him the quote, he replies, I wouldn't read too much into it. I was just trying to connect with this guy Mike, and I was speaking colloquially. Terry Real isn't disputing that he wrote it. He's disputing He's disputing Argyle. He's disputing the interviewer's interpretation of what he said, not that he said it. The real story with this interview is how much of a jerk this journalist is. Narcissistic, playing the victim, bad faith, snarky, passive-aggressive, just getting into the actual content of the interview. Terry Real does emphasize the responsibility that women have in their relationships and with dealing with their own internal baggage and not projecting it onto their spouse. So kudos to him. But the interviewer himself really doesn't like that. That's what he has the most pushback against. Terry Real holding women accountable. The interplay between Terry Real and this gaslighting interview sort of reminds me of a concept, hostile versus benevolent sexism. Sometimes I come across feminist research that has some really interesting implications. Now, it's usually flawed by unfounded assumptions and unconsidered confounds, but some of it is really interesting. Their research into hostile sexism versus benevolent sexism is an example of that. Just a note, I don't necessarily agree with the terms. I think they're very loaded, and I'm going to use them for the sake of clarity only. And I also caution people from applying them to men and the issues of sexism men face. I think they should only be applied to sexism against women. A hostile sexist statement would be, women don't take responsibility for their effect on men's emotions. Benevolent sexism would be, women don't have to take responsibility because men should be strong enough to take it for them. When Amber Heard punches Johnny Depp in the face and then minimizes her actions saying, you weren't punched, you were hit, that is an example of a woman not taking responsibility for her effect on a man's emotions and also physical pain. Let's simplify this. A woman's actions result in a man's pain, and he shouldn't have to take responsibility for her actions nor deny the emotions that are a consequence of those actions. This is honestly the most, or one of the most, taboo ideas in our society. Obviously, women can take responsibility for their actions and the effect of those actions on men, but that's not the point here. I'm talking about benevolent sexism versus hostile sexism. When a man says a woman shouldn't have to take responsibility, a man should do it for her, he's still saying women don't take responsibility. So the benevolent sexist statement is saying pretty much the same thing as the hostile sexist statement, but only one is really damaging when it comes to women's learned helplessness. Can you guess which one? If you guessed hostile sexism, that's not correct. It's benevolent sexism that's the real offender. In my experience, I have indeed come across what feminists would refer to as misogynists or hostile sexists. I mean, genuine misogynists, not just everyone who disagrees with them. A hostile sexist might say women don't take responsibility for their actions' effect on men's emotions. And I respond with, challenge accepted. Some things can't be solved by forcing people to see you in the way you want to be seen. They can only be resolved by taking action. And a hostile sexist might respond with, knock yourself out, or if he's particularly bitter, no, you won't. But, who cares? Because I'm going to take the action, and not only am I going to show him up by proving him wrong, by taking the action, I'm also going to end up improving my relationship. So, win-win. And that's the end of it. That's as far as it goes. Now, what happens with the benevolent sexist? Oh boy. A benevolent sexist says women shouldn't have to take responsibility for their actions and their effect on men's emotions. But what if I want to? You're not listening to me, babe. That's not your role. I take responsibility for you. Here's the thing about our angry misogynist, the so-called hostile sexist. He wants women to take responsibility. He may hate that they don't, or alternatively, he's divorced himself from the outcome and is indifferent. What he's not invested in is taking away responsibility from women. You didn't prevent that train wreck, sir. I'm an airline pilot. You don't hold people accountable for things you don't think they're responsible for. Even if they don't think women do it, they're still holding them responsible for it. Now let's take a look at what the benevolent sexist likely thinks. Women shouldn't have to take responsibility for men's emotions. Why? Because a man should be strong enough to take anything you dish out. That's what a man is. Stronger and more responsible than women. And that contempt is all wrapped up in a little flattering bow. Oh, you shouldn't have to, dear. It's insulting for a woman to be expected to be responsible for the consequences of her actions. Only misogynists make women take responsibility for their actions. The benevolent sexist doesn't want you to take responsibility because he knows wherever you don't take responsibility, you hand it over to him. The benevolent sexist isn't actually dealing with the negative ways that women affect him emotionally. He's just swallowing them in order to maintain his identity until he can't swallow them anymore because something threatens that identity and it all erupts at once. The misogynist, or the hostile sexist, says, hey lady, take responsibility for this. I don't want to internalize it. Thank you. Feminists say we should be afraid of angry men, but I think women should be more afraid of men who are invested, emotionally invested in terms of their identities, in keeping women irresponsible. So I sort of loathe the kind of glad-handing the journalist, Ali Baba, does in this article. My overall impression is that Terence Real has found the philosopher's stone of relationships. Women need to take responsibility for their effect on men, where that's reasonable, and when they do, those relationships improve. Of course, he camouflages this behind everybody's favorite boogeyman, patriarchy, but I suppose that in this climate, that's more self-defense than ideological possession. Thank you for your kind attention. If you would like sneak peeks, special content, and updates on Badger happenings, please subscribe to my mailing list. It is here. There's a little thing here, and also in the low bar. I really appreciate that. It helps me out a lot. And if you would like to hear more about what I have to say about this particular article, or my co-host, Brian Martinez, then stay tuned because there will be a link at the end of this video. Have a lovely day, and I hope to see you on the stream.